Okay, so now it is noon and we are live. This is Power Drift. My name is Shumi. We've just wrapped up the fourth episode of the bucket list, the one in Meghalaya, where I went looking for rain, and luckily, fortunately, I did get it. Although for a long time on that shoot, there was no rain at all, and we were really, really worried. So today we're talking about rain rides, and we're talking about it because we are halfway through May. By the end of this month, by June, usually places like Kerala will already start raining, and soon thereafter the country will get covered in the rain. So we did ask you a couple of days ago as to what would you like to know about the subject, and you guys blew us away. We've got, I think, some 700-800 questions on the Powerlift account, another, I think, 100 on my account. We've shortlisted a few of them. They cover, I think, the largest part of what the questions are, and let me start by saying two or three things that have really changed my approach to riding in the rain and why I love it so much. And the first thing I would say is that the first thing you have to understand is that human skin is waterproof. Okay, it's very easy to forget, and sometimes it's difficult to accept. But the fact is, when you go for a shower in the morning, you do get wet, and you emerge from the shower having toweled off, and you're none the worse for the way you're probably cleaner and happier and fresher. So from that perspective, you should remember that human skin, it's waterproof, and that means that if you do go out in the rain, get wet because whatever, you didn't have the right gear or your gear failed you or whatever, it's not the end of the world unless it's super, super cold. If it's really cold out there, then you do need to protect yourself. And maybe one of the strategies in the extreme cold is to not ride any further and find a place to stop where you have a hot chai or whatever. And that's the way to approach the idea of riding in the rain. But fundamentally, that is waterproof. Nothing's going to happen if you get wet. So first of all, let's get the idea that if I get wet, something is going to happen out of your system. Okay, so I've heard a lot of guys saying, I hate riding in the rain because, water gets into my undies and then, everything is wet inside and it's really uncomfortable. It's in here. Okay, unless you're actually freezing, it's in here. You just need to get over it. I had to do it a long time ago. I used to live in Thane. My commute was all the way to Worli, 35 kilometers. I would get soaked. And after a while, you sort of get over it and you say, hey man, it's rain. It's not really going to harm you. And think about it like this. There is a question about this. In fact, somebody is asking, what happens if somebody splashes a lot of water on you? I just laugh. I mean, what else are you going to do? I mean, if you're going to chase the guy down and say, hey, you splashed water on me, what is he going to do? Maybe it wasn't malicious. It was just he found a pothole when he shouldn't have and you got splashed. What are you going to do? So let me quickly get into the questions sequence. We've got 4 or 5 sections. We've got one large section on fogging, as in there's a lot of questions. We don't need to deal with it for a long time. The answers are quite simple. There's a miscellaneous section, which is a mix of questions. There's precautions that you should take before the rains. This is the time to be thinking about those things, and you'll realize there's not much to do. There's questions about rain gear specifically, gear in the rain and rain gear itself, and riding in the rain as a technique, as an art, as a mental process, and we'll get to that last because I think that is the most important part of the discussion, right? So fogging questions come from a whole bunch of people. There is Anirudh, there is Nishant per second, there is Soham the connoisseur, there's Anurag Chaturvedi, there's Kuber Gupta, there's Krunal Thakkar, and there's Sandeep Natesan, who basically are asking about visor fogging and your glasses being worn inside the helmet fogging. First disclaimer, I don't wear glasses inside my helmet normally, so I'm not usually a good guy to ask about fogging solutions, but there are 2 or 3 things that you can do. One thing I tried last year was Moto Usher, which is a distributor of a whole bunch of brands in India, motorcycle stuff. They have a brand called Moto Solutions, which makes fog tech and raincoat. Fog tech is for the inside of the visor, so it stops you from fogging, and raincoat goes on the outside of your visor so that it stops raindrops from sitting on the thing. They just sort of slide off. Both of them work reasonably well, and I think that both of them are not all that expensive. You get these little pouches which are not expensive. Maybe you want to try one set out and see if that works for you. Amazon also sells Rain-X, but remember, you want the plastic Rain-X, not the glass Rain-X. Our visors are plastic. The glass Rain-X doesn't work on those. It tends to spoil the visor in the long run. But the easy solution is shaving foam or toothpaste, which you can rub onto the lenses and then basically buff it out so that it's clear again. And both of them will prevent fogging from happening on the inside. As far as the outside of the visor is concerned, I've driven with a lot of people who like to do windshield wiping constantly when they're driving in the rain, and I am like the opposite. I will let it get quite dirty before I wipe it down, and I find that if you focus enough into the distance, the amount of filth on the visor or on the windscreen actually bothers you quite a bit less. So my suggestion to you is that if you think that the visor is getting really filthy and you're having difficulty seeing, there is maybe a riding technique error in there where you're looking too close to the motorcycle, and we'll talk about it in the riding session, where that is quite a serious problem in the rain. If you're looking too close to the motorcycle, the way your eyes focus, the dirt will bug you quite a bit more. So if that's happening to you, chances are there is an opportunity for you to be able to ride your motorcycle better. It's not necessarily something that requires a physical solution in terms of doing something to your helmet. Okay, we also have questions on visor fogging. The other reason why visor fogging happens is when the ventilation inside the helmet is not well designed. There's no real easy way to fix it. Helmets like those have a small mechanism which cracks the visor open just a little bit. There's just enough wind to prevent it from happening. And of course, RI uses pin locks, Shoei and other brands use chemical coatings, whatever the mechanism is, but they're designed to handle that situation. A cheaper helmet may not be. Okay, I'm not going to say specifically that MTs are terrible at it or LS2s are terrible at it. I'm just saying a cheaper helmet may not have the cost bandwidth to do that much planning and organizing so that the helmet does that well. Okay, so most touring helmets should, for example, handle fogging quite well, whereas race helmets like that may not, because the idea is if you're riding a motorcycle on the racetrack, fogging shouldn't really be a problem, so it doesn't really require a massive solution. So as far as fogging concerned, try the trucker techniques. Used to be potato and tobacco rubbed on the outside. That would prevent water from accumulating. That's one thing to try. On the inside, shaving foam and toothpaste. Basically thin layer, and then you buff it out with a cloth so that it's clear again, but that will prevent the fogging. It prevents condensation from forming on that surface. The technical solution, Fog Tech, Raincoat, both available at Moto Usher, not really that expensive. Try them out and see if it works. It did work for me last season, although because I ride so much, I have to do the coating again and again and again, and that began to annoy me. So I think towards the end of the season, I wasn't really doing it anymore, but I know that it works. Okay, let's move on to the miscellaneous questions. Last, let's talk about what do you do before the rain start. So Sanatan0701 says, what care should be taken while riding in the rains? Too generic a question. We'll come to this. This whole live is about that. What parts should be oiled before and after riding the rain? So this used to be a thing I used to do when I was working very, very early on as a motorcycle journalist in the early 2000s. And we had a CBZ and a Thunderbird or something like that. And my boss would insist that we go out and put oil on the rims and all of that kind of thing. Honestly, I haven't done it for the last 17 years or something like that. So I've never actually gone down to the motorcycle and coated something with something so that the rain won't get to it. Today's motorcycles generally don't corrode. You do want to be a little bit more careful around motorcycles where the aluminium parts on the engine, the outer cases, etc. are not coated. They can corrode. You need to be careful about those. And if you're riding a retro classic, this is why I don't ride retro classics. If you're riding a retro classic with a lot of chrome and steel on it, then your maintenance work is higher. Those are the parts that will need a little bit of care. And one of the ways is to take some ideally non-cooking oil, because eventually something will try to eat the cooking oil, non-cooking oils, and just coat the surface lightly, and you might have to reapply it a few times throughout the season. All of my bikes, including the test bikes, I have not done anything. I do get them washed and cleaned more regularly than usual, and for all my bikes, I will usually do a very, very detailed cleanup right at the end of the season. So as soon as the rains get over, I will give the bike in for service and pay the guys extra, saying I want it washed thoroughly, I want it cleaned fully, under the engine, between the belly pan, all of that needs to be absolutely spick and span. I just do that once a year, and I think that works quite well. Which tire do you prefer in the rainy season? There are a lot of tire questions. G-String Strummers is asking about tires, so is Prabodh Star. Danish has asked the same question that we just answered, saying if I ride my bikes in the rain, will it get damaged in terms of rust? Not really. They're designed to be out there. Higher quality products obviously won't. If you're riding a motorcycle whose quality is not that great, yeah, there might be a problem there. What kind of tires? I have only ever used whatever the motorcycle comes with as the OE tire. On my personal motorcycles, I've moved around, and especially on the Multistrada, which has a lot of miles on it. But to me, the stock tire is usually good enough if it's not worn out. So what I will usually do is try and ensure that right about now, it's a lockdown this year, so it will obviously be a challenge, but this is right the time of the year when I'm starting to buy and replace tires for whatever needs fresh tires. So for example, I know that my KTM's Apollo H1s are actually in decent shape. They have 3 punctures on them, 1 in the front, 2 in the back, but that's okay for now. During the rains, I won't worry about the punctures too much because it's not really going that fast. The Multistrada's tires are nearly finished. The 210 should also be almost getting over. I think one track day and maybe one ride home, and then those tires are done as well. So, but I will try to get all of that around this time of the year. So I go into the range with a new set of tires, and that means the deepest tread I can. And I will not usually buy the tire for the rain. So let's assume that Michelin has the Road 5 and a Road 5 rain tire. I will probably not buy the rain tire. It's just 3 months of rain, and after that you're back in the dry, where the rain tire is of no real use. So anybody who's trying to buy something specifically for the rain, I'd say don't do it. But get your tires replaced now. Now would be a good time to do it. Okay. Best type of tires, I would say OE tires. There are good OE tires and bad OE tires. Remember, the trade-off in performance is with longevity. The stickier the tire, the softer the compound, the longer it'll have. The shorter it will last. Okay, so when we joined the business, we were told that the motorcyclists in India expected 35,000 kilometers from their tires, and therefore making a performance tire for them was a huge challenge, because they simply didn't want to give up the life. But as we've gotten to faster motorcycles, we've begun to realize that 10-15,000 kilometers from a performance tire is enough, and therefore we are getting much softer, much better tires now. It's the same continuum. So if you take Pirellis as an example, the Rosso Corsa is their top sporty street tire. Above that is the Super Corsa, which I completely disregard as a street tire, because in 3,000-4,000 kilometers it's just gone, right? Below that is the Rosso 3. The Rosso 3 might last 1.5 to 2 times as long as a Rosso Corsa, but offer you consequently less grip. In the same way, on the Michelin side, Road 5 is a very, very good balanced tire. Above that is the Power Series, and the Power Series don't last because they give you grip. So that's the choice you're making. But in the rain, what you want is a lot of tread. The more water the tire can eject, the better it is for you. We already answered that. Country Fruit RRK asks, is there any special care for the engine, fuel lines, electricals for rain rides? I don't do anything, but I do keep my bikes quite well. So if you've just had it serviced just before the rains, just check that all the electrical connectors, nothing has become exposed. Especially inside the headlight, there might be a lot of electrical connections. I don't really open them every year, but whenever they're opened, I will ensure that the mechanic actually goes through all the connections and sees all the electrical tape and everything is wound up tight, so that in case a little bit of water does enter all of those parts, nothing actually happens. And to be honest with you, 20 years of riding at roughly 50,000 kilometers here, never had a bike stop in the rain because of the water. So I don't really see that as a big real issue that needs to be dealt with on that level. How to maintain a bike in the rainy season, asks Anas Jethwa. Any special precautions, any products? Like I said, I don't do anything specific. I would like to have fresh tires on the bike before the rains, and I would like to have it serviced before the rains. But outside of that, I don't really do much. How safe is it riding in the rains with stock tires like MRF on the Dominar? If they are relatively recent tires, they've not worn out, you'll be fine. What are the optimum speeds? We'll come to in the riding session. This was Mohit. Nyctophile asks about the small plastic covers that cover the switches. Are they necessary? Haven't used them for 20 years, and when I came to Mumbai in the year 2000 was the first time I saw those little switch raincoats and tank cover raincoats and instrument raincoats, and I was like, I don't know what this is about, but I can tell you that if you were to go to a test facility, like we've seen TVS's test facility, which is right next to their racetrack at Hosur, they have actually like a long tunnel like this with water streamers that point in like this and like that, so that when the bike goes through, water is sent into the motorcycle at force from all directions, and it's called a leak down test, and the idea is to ensure that there is no weakness in terms of the waterproofing of the motorcycle. Works really well too. As far as I am concerned, I would not do anything specific. If your motorcycle is older, obviously it needs more care, because more parts on the motorcycle are now closer to the end of their lives, as it were. So if you're all riding new motorcycles, not really a problem. If you're riding old motorcycles, service before the rains, I think you should be fine. Does the exposed engine unit during long rides disturb combustion efficiency? Asked Srini. Nope. Is it convenient to ride with new tires on? Yes, but not brand new. Okay, when they are brand new, they might be a little slippery first 4 or 5 kilometers, and that's because the tire is made in a mold, and then it needs to be ejected from the mold, and they use what is called a mold release compound to do that. So when the mold release compound is still on the tread, it can be a little bit slippery. So if you're going to put fresh tires on and then go out into the rain, be careful for the first, I would say, 10 kilometers. After that, they are better than everything else. How to run a tire check before going out in the rains? Basically, a visual inspection is enough just to ensure that there are no nails, rocks, whatever that are stuck in the tube, in the treads. They can't puncture the bike as you roll along. And obviously, you will visually check the tire pressure, or if you have a gauge, check the tire pressure. In fact, I got a very nice gauge recently. Big Bad Bikes was having a sale, and Cruise Tools, which is a fairly well-known American brand, they were selling off a really nice small tire pressure gauge, which I acquired, and now that goes in my bag every day. So whenever I need to, I can check tire pressure. It's also a calibrated gauge that I have, so I'm not reliant on the tire pressure gauges at the petrol pump anymore. That would be a good investment if you're a serious motorcyclist, especially if you're touring. Road tires are enough, or dual purpose tires? Okay, look, dual purpose tires and road tires have a very different intent, and therefore dual purpose tires automatically don't become better in the rain. Dual purpose tires have big blocks and deep treads, and the idea is that when you go into soil, loose surfaces, the block can dig into the soil and connect, and then dig and hook and drive the bike forward. On a wet road, this has no real purpose because the tire can't really dig into tarmac. So I would say normal OEM street tires with decent good tread are better than dual sport tires in the wet. In the wet, if you do have to go off-road, obviously, the dual sport tire will do more work for you than the street tire, and that's the trade-off depending on your riding pattern. Most of us don't go off-road enough for us to think about it like that. So I would say, for me, I would stick to the OE tire. As long as the tread is good and fresh, we'll be okay. Right, let's talk about rain gear. Lots of questions about rain gear, and the first thing I want to remind you is that your skin is waterproof, so if you don't have rain gear, you'll be fine unless it's really cold. And if it's really cold and you don't have rain gear, maybe the best solution is for you to stop and wait the rain out rather than try and freeze your way home. Okay, when we talked about base layers in the videos that we did on IGTV for riding gear, we did talk about the idea that base layers, mesh and rain are a bad combination because you get cold really fast. That is one situation where I would stop. I would give you the actual example here today. I was riding back from a Bajaj press conference in Pune. I used to live in Bombay at that point. Came down out of Pune, and then the rain started, and I was suddenly extremely cold because the base layer was just evaporating all this water that was falling really, really fast, and the rain was supplying it with more water. And about half an hour later, it was intensely uncomfortable to ride the bike. I had to stop, take a break, have chai, and luckily the rain stopped and the rest of the journey wasn't such a pain in the ass. But basically, you need to cover at that point. Newspaper is an easy solution. It gets wet, but it does block the wind after that, so you don't really feel the evaporative cooling so much. So do you really need rain gear, and are you incapacitated without it? You're not. Okay. What kind of rain gear should you be buying? My policy is to not buy expensive rain gear because it doesn't last more than a season. Okay, 3 seasons max. So if you're going to buy a branded motorcycle rain suit like a Revit or a Joe Rocket or whatever, they're very good. Okay, I've seen the European riders who ride with us at our international launches use them. They're extraordinarily well made, really hardy materials and all of that. But the way I see it is we operate in a far dirtier condition with a lot more chaos happening, and I would rather buy a cheap raincoat every year than to buy a really expensive one and try and maintain it for 3 or 4 years. I find that process personally quite a bit easier. So I would just go to Decathlon. I've used a Decathlon pullover with a little zip thing for years together. Not that one, I mean, I keep replacing them. Similarly, the Decathlon hiking pants kind of thing, they have a rain thing, which is quite long also, which is very nice because it covers your ankles quite well. That's the kind of raincoat I would use for the rain. I would rather not buy a motorcycle specific expensive thing. But yes, I know that the single piece rain suits are the best. They are also the most uncomfortable to wear in our weather. Remember, Europe, Americas, their rain happens in a colder temperature ambient or in the winter, where they do need to do all of that protection because they will simply freeze without it. So big heavy raincoats with all that does work there. Our weather conditions where we usually get rain in the warm season, not so much. Could you please explain a bit about the gear we need to wear, how to take care of those? This is from Shrikar. Okay, look, taking care of gear is the simplest thing on earth. Throw it in the washing machine on the delicate cycle and you'll be done. Remember, all the rain gear has tape seams, and what you're trying to protect is tape seams. So try and close off all the zippers. If you have an old pillowcase or something, put it inside the pillowcase and then throw it in the washing machine. So when it's tumbling or spinning, the friction and wear and tear on the object itself isn't too much. But honestly, I don't do more than that. I would rather be riding motorcycles than taking care of stuff like this and spending a lot of time on that. Complete gear and essentials to consider while riding in the rain. Okay, so my gear set doesn't change throughout the year. I use the same pants in the rains that I normally do. I use the same jacket. I do have rain gloves. And I started buying them many years ago when I realized that the amount of wear and tear I put into my leather glove just by allowing them to get wet and dry is just not worth the money, right? So in my riding cycle where I will ride right through the rains on a daily basis, it makes sense for me to have proper separate waterproof rain gear. The gloves video is coming out soon, and we've talked about what kind of waterproof gloves to buy. My suggestion to you is whatever your normal size is, waterproof gloves should usually be one size larger, especially ones that have thick linings inside that tend to come out when you pull your hand out. One size larger makes that process quite a bit simpler. The helmet, you don't need to do anything. They're already waterproof and rainproof. Your jacket will come with an inner liner or an outer liner. If they come with an inner liner, like my Dainese do, just see if the material dries quickly. I find that a lot of the Dainese materials actually dry really fast, so having an inner liner is not so much of a challenge. You can ride for a bit, get soaked, and then 20 minutes later realize that your jacket's 90% dry again. Yeah, so it works out quite well. A better solution if you're riding in the cold is to have an outer rain layer, which is like a cheap Decathlon raincoat. Now again, remember, those have to be oversized, right? So if your jacket is a large, you might want to buy an XL or a double XL raincoat so that it goes over, because remember, there's your forearm, then there's armor on top, then there's padding, and then there's the material. So it needs to be quite a bit larger to accommodate all that volume. You can't go too much larger though. We had one colleague who was wearing something that was, I think, 2 sizes or 3 sizes larger on a ride from Mumbai to Bangalore, I think, and his jacket basically tore from all the flapping because it was too large for him. So you need to get 1 or 2 sizes larger so the jacket can be accommodated into the rain suit and you're done. That's what I would wear in the rains. So helmet, normal helmet, inner or outer rain layer, you have to decide about your comfort level. Same goes for the pants, whether you put on a pair of rain pants on top. Now there's a tip for the rain pant, okay? If you have a small plastic bag, slip it over your shoe and then try to wear the rain pants. The plastic bag actually makes it simpler for the leg to go in, and then you can take the plastic bag and put it on the other shoe. It also keeps all the muck that is at the bottom of the shoe inside that plastic bag rather than now inside your rain pants. It's a quick trick, and it makes putting rain pants on the side of the road much simpler than trying to struggle and hop or having to take off shoes and find a place to sit and all of that complicated thing. One plastic bag over the shoe and then you put your leg in. Much faster. Shoes is a big topic, and I think that is the next question, is it? Yep, shoes. So now shoes is a budget issue, okay? Gore-Tex shoes are not cheap. So I've had the Daytonas, which are about 34,000 or 31,000, something like that, for, I'm going to say, almost 2 years now. So they've got about 70,000-80,000 kilometers to 1 lakh kilometers on it, and they don't leak at all. So good waterproof shoes do exist, and the money that you spend on it is worth it if you're going to use them enough. Okay. Now I'm lucky. My feet don't stink or sweat, which means even if I wear Gore-Tex throughout the year, and I often do, it doesn't really make my experience any worse. But I know a lot of people, and I've asked them when they ask me saying, what shoes do I get? I have asked them saying, do your feet stink? Do you get sweaty? And if they do, then obviously their solutions are different. So should you be buying a shoe cover? I find them a little bit clumsy, but they do work in terms of waterproofing. Do you want a shoe cover or do you want a waterproof boot is a matter of your budget and the amount of time you're going to spend on the motorcycle in the wet. If you're basically buying it to go to office and come back, I think you'll get away with a shoe cover. In any case, if you buy a shoe cover and realize that it doesn't work, as 3,000-4,000 rupees down the drain, not a 30,000 rupee boot that you're not really going to use. So to me, I prefer waterproof boots, but then I also ride quite a bit. And that's why I would say, if your mileage in the rain is that kind of high, get waterproof boots. Otherwise, I think boot covers are fine. Specific gears in the rain, says Tripmunk. I think we just covered that. Krishraj, affordable strap-on. That's the question that we just answered. Prabodh Star says, helmet foam gets wet. How to avoid slippage of levers. Okay, so slippage on the levers is a matter of the fact that you're probably not wearing gloves. And if you're riding in the rain without gloves, to get gloves, these are the only hands you're ever going to get. You don't want to damage them. It's very easy to do that in the rains. And we'll talk about that in the next section, which is about riding gear. Helmet foam getting wet. Well, the trick that I learned is a laptop cooler. Helmet foam, even when you're sweating or when you're in the rain, rarely gets so wet that it drips down. So what I do is I have in my Pune house, I have two laptop coolers sitting next to each other. So that helmet and the other one, they basically sit on the laptop cooler. And what it does is a gentle moving flow of air through the helmet that carries all the wetness out and the moisture out. That's all that's required. Okay, so and by the cheapest laptop cooler you don't want any of the fancy features. You just want the fan to run. Okay, that's all that it takes to dry the helmet foam out. For the boots also, sometimes I've found that if you keep the boots and you put the laptop cooler on top so that it's basically pulling the moist air out of the boot, it actually makes quite a difference overnight. The trick that we've all used is newspaper, ball it up, put it inside the shoe and leave it. By morning, 50, 60, 70% of the moisture is gone. Okay, newspapers, not any other paper. You want an absorbent kind of paper. So I would say that using kitchen paper or tissue paper in an emergency is fine, but it's a little bit wasteful because this paper can be used for other things. Newspaper, on the other hand, is the last of the line for that newspaper before it goes to recycling. So I would rather crush and ball up newspaper and stick it down. And you don't want to ball it up really tight. You want to ball it up so that the surface area is still quite a bit and there's room for the newspaper to absorb moisture from the sides of the boot. Right, we had a few miscellaneous questions. Let's see what those are about. Nisim Anand says, how much luggage to carry? Does luggage affect traction? Not really. You have to have really heavy traction luggage before traction makes a difference. So when I ride with a pillion, I can use a lot more rear brake in the wet. So that's like a 70-80 kilo person. Then I can feel the difference between the grip in the rear tire and the front tire. Luggage would just never get to those weights. If your luggage gets to weights of that scale, you need to learn to pack. Best way to quickly dry your riding shoes during a ride. I don't worry about my gear during the ride. I will only do it after. In the night, I will usually get some newspaper from the hotel reception or whatever, ball it up, put it inside the shoe and leave it. If I'm at home and I have the laptop cooler handy, then I will usually put the laptop cooler on top and let it extract as much air as it can out of the boot. Carburetor or EFI engine, fuel injection, always. I don't want to mess with the motorcycle, I just want to ride them, and I find fuel injected engines do that better than carbureted engines, especially when weather conditions are changing. Carburetors can be quite sensitive, especially if you mess with them. How could we travel to college on bikes during the rains? Well, when we were in college, we were in Delhi, which didn't rain much, and I didn't really have a bike, so this was not really a problem. But today what I do is, in the beginning of the monsoon seasons, I will take a set of clothes and leave them in the office. That's one socks, one pair of undies, a couple of base layers, a t-shirt, jeans or something like that, and a pair of slippers or something, so that I have a fresh and towel and one camping towel type thing from Decathlon. So idea is that you have a full set of clothes that you can change into at work, and then your worst case scenario is that you have to get back into wet gear to ride home, and throughout the rainy season, depending on how many times you get wet, you might have to bring another set of clothes in and out and wash them a couple of times. Far more convenient than any other way to approach the problem. If you wear enough rain gear in our weather so that you are not getting wet from the outside, you'll show up sweaty from the inside, so it doesn't really matter. First chasing the sun, then chasing the rain. I wonder what's next. Rainbows, asks the Indian speedster. Hey, this is Power Drift. We are always chasing rainbows. Tell me if you got that joke. System out print LOL asks, what do you do when other vehicles splash insane amounts of water on you? I laugh. How do you navigate using Google Maps when riding in the rain? Asks Shanawaz. This is a good question. I constantly run my phone, the phone that I'm live at you right now. It's an iPhone. It's supposed to be waterproof, and so I use that to the fullest, so I will leave it out. The only problem is eventually when water droplets fall on the screen, then the screen starts to react. That's when I will usually lock the screen. If the phone is waterproof, it's out there, it's navigating even if it's raining. And honestly, like I say about bikes, they are supposed to have a job and they're supposed to know how to do it. Similarly, if my phone manufacturer says the phone is waterproof, it had better work in the rain. So far, this phone, it works actually quite well. Now, let's go to the most interesting section, the one that I've been waiting to attack. This is all the out of the way, and it's taken us 27 minutes to do it, so we can get into it. So, Rain Gear 01, here we go. The first question is from DP6015 Dev, and he says, is there any rain gear available in India that's truly, genuinely waterproof and also budget friendly? Sachin Chavan, the famous guy who works for Royal Enfield, used to organize the group rides and all that kind of thing. Sachin Chavan once said something, and it's absolutely super on point, and he says, everything is waterproof, it's a matter of for how long. Okay, so for example, if you take, say, a napkin might be waterproof for half a micron of a second. After that, it's not waterproof anymore, right? If you take a steel plate, is waterproof for say 1,000,000 years. Okay, so you're playing a time scale. So waterproofing, anything can be truly genuinely waterproof depending on your budgets. Now, again, like I said, I prefer to buy the cheapest raincoats possible. So I used to buy what is now, I think the brand is called Neil. I used to buy those 300, 400 rupee raincoats. They work just fine. By the end of the rains, I'd have them in tatters, especially around the ankles and stuff, where they go over the boots constantly and all that. And that'd be fine because I'd just buy a new one for the next season and that would work great. You do want to try and aim for a breathable raincoat in our weather, so that at least the sweat that is coming out has a way to vent out of the jacket. Not very easy to find, unfortunately, and therefore the experience of wearing rain gear in the rain, in the heat, is a little bit uncomfortable, and there is no real way around it. Like I said earlier, I prefer not to buy really expensive rain gear because I think I wear it out too fast. So I would rather have cheap rain gear, wear it out, and then buy a fresh set for the next season. Shrikar asks, could you please explain a bit about the gear we need to wear and how to take care? Right, we talked about, oh, okay, sorry, my mistake. Yeah, here we go. How do I get comfortable with the idea of getting wet so that it's not a problem and it's enjoyable? Dude, that's the unlock. I mean, if I had a way to patent the solution to that, I'd be rich. I'd have many motorcycles. But it's in here, right? You have to get over the idea that rain is uncomfortable and is going to cause problems. So every year I get excited by the rain because I'm thinking, wow, traction is going to get lower, which means my skills have to work harder, which means at the end of the rainy season I will be able to ride faster and safer. And to me, that is the incentive that I'm working with. And honestly, I get excited when I see the rain. So in the bucket list season 1 episode 4 in Meghalaya, when the rain came down, I actually didn't know that the cameras were rolling. I was actually happy to see the rain. I was like, yeah, rain! And on a motorcycle, there's not much else that you can do. Unless you're Valentino Rossi, of course, in which case you can do a lot. So that was like genuine excitement for the rain. And in here, it's like, it's not going to kill me, but it does give me an opportunity to improve my skills. So I would totally want to do that. That's the idea of riding in the rain. You have to get over the idea that it's uncomfortable and all of that. Some of the absolute best rides I've ever had in terms of focus, concentration, my ability to bring all my skills to bear on the motorcycle have all been in the wet. So just get over it. Just get on with it and realize that you get wet every day. You get wet on your face when you brush your teeth. You get wet all over when you take a shower or a bath. What's the big deal? Maybe it's better at 50 kmph. How can we control wheel spin while turning at normal speeds? So there are a lot of questions about braking, wheel spin and all of these, and let me answer that in one sense. The reason why riding in the rain is so important in terms of your skill and it's so much fun is because it forces you to think much further ahead of the motorcycle. Okay, so those of us who are able to go fast in the rain don't go fast because we can brake harder than you or we can control wheel spin better than you. It's because we are looking further ahead than you and we are able to understand what's coming at us earlier than other riders. And that means that when I'm approaching, say, a traffic light, whether it's green or red, I'm already looking into the intersection and trying to figure out what's going to happen. Will I need to go for my brakes or will I need to go for my throttle? And as I do this, my throttle will probably already be off, which means my front tire is already loaded. So if I need to brake, I already have the motorcycle at the right attitude. The idea is of anticipation. If you can anticipate what's going to happen, then you don't really need to use all of these skills. Okay, so the first thing that the rain rides will change for you is your ability to anticipate what's coming to you and then be able to react earlier. Okay, traction is low, which means in the dry, if you could have swerved around a cow, in the wet you're not going to be able to swerve around the cow. So it's absolutely vital that you see it very early on and you take precautions for that really early. So you have to be much smoother because the amount of time the tire will take to react to an input is now longer because it doesn't have that much traction. The motorcycle can't turn or stop as quickly as it could in the dry, and all of it means you have to look further ahead, you have to anticipate better, and you have to make decisions much earlier on and execute them really smoothly. If there's a better way to learn how to ride a motorcycle, I don't know it. Okay, how do you judge the depth of a pothole? So this is a common question. Now on my commute, I will literally memorize the road. Okay, I'm not making this up. 35 kilometers from Thane to Worli back in the day, 12 kilometers in Pune now from Gahunje to Baner. I will memorize the road. I will remember where what was so that I know where the deeper potholes are likely to be and where the less deep potholes are. And on certain days, I will try and put a tire into that just to get a sense of, are we still at the same level, or is the surface underneath starting to break? Obviously, when I'm doing that, I'm on my guard. Because I don't know what's under the water, but I will actually memorize that road. But then remember, I believe motorcycling is mutually exclusive to all other activities, which means when I'm on the bike, I'm only thinking about the bike. The best time to learn that is, in fact, the rains. As far as out on the highway on an unknown road goes, if you can avoid it, don't put parts of your motorcycle in the water at all if you can avoid it. Remember, don't be the auto rickshaw on the road, right? So when you see the pothole, just don't go around it assuming that you're the only guy on that road. Take your time, check your mirrors. You should know what's happening behind you and whether you can actually go around it or not. The third thing to do is, if you're really worried about how deep the water is, the best solution is either to wait for somebody to go through the water so you get a sense of it, or you walk through the water before you commit your motorcycle to it. Okay, so when you're going to Ladakh and you come upon a completely unknown water crossing and you are not able to gauge the depth, most people will recommend park the bike, go for a walk, go into the water and see what the current is like, what the flow is like, how deep is it, what kind of surface is underneath, what are you going to have to deal with before you commit machinery to it. It's the same process in the rains as well. So if you're out on the highway and there's like really massive waterlogging, I would say don't even walk into it. I don't know if there are electrical lines in there that are leaking current into it. Just wait for somebody else to do it. As far as regular potholes are concerned, on your way to the work, office, college, school, whatever, I think you can learn that route. Just start remembering where the hazard spots are, and it starts the process of trying to figure out what the environment is. We teach this at the racetrack. We say human beings do best when they know where they are. The example we use there, and it applies here, is when would you ride better? If you were riding to your college, school, office, whatever, things that you know, or if I were to invite you to a party to my house, give you navigation information, when would you ride better? I would suspect you would ride better on your commute because you already know the geography of it. It'd be much harder for you to ride smoothly to my house because you'd have to run navigation, there'll be unfamiliar roads in the place, and there'll be a lot of stuff going on in your head apart from the riding itself. In the same way, the more you know about the road you commute on, and remember that's 80-90% of your riding, the better it is for you. Some pointers on braking during a heavy downpour. Practice. So basically you want to learn to load the front tire and the rear tire progressively so that the motorcycle stops as hard as possible. But this is a skill that's learned over time. So if you do this, you're definitely going to fall. If you do this on an ABS bike, you basically kick ABS on a lot earlier than it has to. And then you'll say, oh, the ABS is messing with me, I can't stop. It's not the ABS is messing with you. It's too much pressure too early on the motorcycle and not allowing the weight transfer to happen that's causing the ABS to turn on. So the idea in the rains is you come onto the front brake and you gently load, and as the rear tire compresses further and further, you have more and more possibility to add more brake force. That's how you stop the fastest. You'll have to learn this. So I, in the dry and the wet, will do one full emergency stop every day on the way to work just to keep myself sharp in terms of what it feels like and what do I need to bring to the table, even on ABS motorcycles. Non-ABS motorcycles are a little bit more challenging because there is no safety net, which is why today if you were to make me ride a non-ABS motorcycle, I'd worry about it. So if you can, get rid of the non-ABS motorcycle and get something with ABS and have that safety net, it really does work. But if you don't practice the skill of braking, then nothing else will work. The biggest skill about heavy braking in a downpour is, can you avoid it? Can you look far enough to realize that's going to require heavy braking and slow down right now so that it's not so heavy at the end? Is it possible to get rid of riding in the rain phobia due to visibility issues? I've dealt with visibility issues right in the beginning. So shaving foam or toothpaste on the inside of the visor should prevent fogging. There are a whole bunch of solutions for the outside. Try it, but most important is to look ahead and anticipate. It's that anticipation that makes great rain rides, not any physical skills or any of these things. Is it more dangerous than riding in regular weather conditions? Yes. If there is less grip on the road, everybody's having to deal with it, which means the truckies, the guys in buses, the cars, other motorcyclists, cyclists, everybody has less traction to deal with. So their ability to react to a situation is obviously hampered, which means your risk level is greater. So should you always be riding in the rain? No, I will never ride in the first 3 or 4 days of the rain because the entire year our traffic spends its time depositing diesel and other contaminants onto the road surface. They sit there and they basically wait for the rains, and the rains wash them up. The first 3 or 4 days, the roads are super slippery. Those are the 4 or 5 days I will not touch a motorcycle. There is nothing on earth that will make me do it. The rest of the year, once the roads are clean, the grip levels are actually surprisingly high. Especially out on the highway where the roads get cleaned up because the speeds of traffic is much higher. You'd be surprised at how much grip can come from those if you have reasonably good tires. I don't even want like great rain tires. reasonably good OE tires with reasonable amounts of tread is enough. So, is it more dangerous? Yes. Should that stop you from doing it? That's about your risk assessment and risk perception. For the first 5 days of rains, it's too much risk for me to take. For the rest of the season, I'm actually quite happy to be out there. Tips for night rain riding. Oh, this is difficult. Okay. In the city, night rain rides don't really last too long, so I'm not really worried too much about it. But yeah, if your glove has one of those plastic or rubber thingies on the finger which you can wipe, they actually work quite well to prevent glare from getting in your way. But out on the highway, in the rain, in the dark, see if you can avoid it. When I used to go to the racetrack in the rainy season, it would be dry in Coimbatore or Chennai relative to leaving from Mumbai or Pune. I would have to deal with some amount of riding in the dark, but since I was leaving at 4 a.m. in the morning, there wasn't that much oncoming traffic, so it was not so bad. But yeah, that's the kind of situation where auxiliary lights will help, and stock headlamps in the wet on dark roads, and our tarmac is really, really dark because the tar we use is really black in color. It's a difficult situation. I would say avoidable if you can figure out a way around it. Nowhere to. What about the fear of skidding and falling? Says Chintala. Get over the fear of skidding and falling. It's motorcycling. Eventually, you're going to fall. If you're going to fall, you're probably going to get hurt. The risk of serious injury and death are both absolutely real, and therefore, riding motorcycles has to be taken very, very, very seriously. So, from that perspective, it exists. The fear of skidding and falling is real. You have to learn to deal with it. One way to deal with it is to not look down, but to look up ahead into the distance. So if something is going to happen in front of you as a hazard to you, you see it 30, 40 seconds earlier than you would otherwise have, and that gives you more time to react to it and take precautions. That's the trick to riding in the wet. That's also how you're going to get rid of that fear. What's the max speed we can go on a slippery road? Depends on the grip level, depends on your confidence level. I would say that in a closed circuit environment where there isn't traffic around, I've braked at I think 251 kilometers an hour on my friend's CBR 600 bike into turn 1 at Curry. That's where I started braking from. So you can go really, really fast in the wet, especially on clean roads. The racetrack is a clean place. If the grip levels are high, and they usually are. First 5 of days of the rain, don't try anything at all. Please don't ride. After that, it's a matter of working it out. Concrete roads, for example, have very, very low grip levels, even generally. Tarmac roads are much better. There are some really abrasive, like Hereth Venvi Road is a really abrasive surface, but it also means that in the wet, it still continues to produce quite a bit of grip. So I don't know that there is a direct answer to that question. So let's move right along. How to use the brake on a non-ABS bike at the time of cornering on a rainy day. Don't use your brakes when you're cornering at all if you can avoid it. Trail braking is best learnt at the racetrack. It's not something that I want to think about doing every day. I don't think it's a great idea. But on a non-ABS bike, if you're already leaned over, I would say you should not need your brakes. You should be anticipating quite a bit more. Cornering during rainy days, is it safe? What precautions? It's about smoothness. Your tires are able to deal with your inputs if you can be really smooth. And the smoothness comes from the idea that my throttle hand has to open slower. It has to come from the fact that I can go on my brakes, but I have to go on my brakes slower as well. As soon as you can space the time of your input, then things get better. Okay. Let me just check on the feedback. We have questions at the feedback level also. Okay, let me just get through this. Controlling wheel spin, we talked about. We've gone to the other end of this. Hold on. All right. Should we turn on hazards when it's pouring? Only if you think it's a genuine hazard. If you think there's genuinely a problem where somebody may not be able to see you, that's when you turn your hazards on. Hazards are not to indicate to other people that they're raining, because trust me on this, they are not stupid. They can feel, hear, and see the rain themselves as well. So the idea is the hazards is only to let other people know that either you're in trouble or you think that the visibility is a challenge. So they're not constantly on in the rains. They're certainly not on because you're on a group ride. That's just silly. Which one is better, Apollo Alphas or MRF Master? I haven't used the MRF Master, but Kartikeya Singhi told me that that's an absolutely excellent MRF tire. I have used the Apollo H1s. They've been on my KTM for a year, and I find them absolutely brilliant. They have evolved the tire in that year. So a friend of mine uses them at the racetrack, and he says the profile has become a little bit flatter, and they're a much, much nicer tire to use than they started out with. But I have enjoyed them in the wet already. Decide water wading depth. I've never had a situation where the water was so much that I thought that the bike would stop. If I think the water is that much, then I will just not enter until I see something else go through it, and then decide based on what they did whether I would be able to get through it or not. Panic braking shouldn't have to. Visibility is reduced. The visibility is reduced both by there being moisture in the air and also because you're throwing water behind your vehicle, which obscures your vehicle as well. Wear brighter colored gear, wear more reflectives if you can. And I'm not a fan of things flashing at me; those are illegal. Like a secondary tail lamp that flashes every time you hit a tail light, hit your brakes. I'm not a fan of those, but. That's what I would say. I would say more of the reflectives will do most of the work for you. Also, remember, visibility is also about you positioning yourself so people can see you. So, for example, if you decide to ride behind a truck because you think the spray is less, then that truck is also blocking you from everybody else. So, also be aware of how people are able to see you or not. Okay. Is there any way to handle a very heavy downpour? If it is so heavy that your visibility is hampered, just stop. It's not worth it. Basically, you're riding as fast as you can see. So if you're going to see so little that you're only riding at 3 kmph, you might as well stop under a tree or something. If you can see, then there's no reason to stop. How do you ride at the night when visible? I don't. Tire size matters in the rain? Not really. Okay, so there is some idea about motorcycle tires anyway being very good in the rain because they have a very small contact patch, which means hydroplaning, which is the water gets between the road and the tire is really difficult to do because the pressure per square inch on the tire is very high compared to a car tire. So do you want to change your tire size from the OE just because of the rains? I would say no. Some people like it to have 1-2 psi of air less than stock in the rain so that the tire compresses a little bit. It feels better. Some people like the other side where they want the tire slightly overinflated and they enjoy the idea that hydroplaning will actually happen even later because there's even less tire on the ground now. I typically run stock pressures, so you have to make that choice. I don't really do anything specific for rains because I don't think the benefit is enough. Yep, that's actually the question I just answered. Braking techniques in the rain, it's all about smoothness. The smoother you can be, the better riding in the rain gets. It's all about how much time can you find for yourself. Okay, this is not automatic. You have to put effort into it. How much time can you find for yourself to be able to open the throttle smoothly and get up to speed, to roll off the throttle, get on the brake and smoothly come to a nice controlled hard stop. It is a learned skill. The anticipation of it and the physical parts of it are both learned skills, and you have the entire 3 months of the rains to figure it out. Do figure it out, because when the rains get over and the dry season comes back, you will discover that you're a far, far, far superior rider. That's the whole bunch of questions that I have that from the previous thing. Now, you guys have been chatting with me, and I'm sorry, but I haven't been able to see what's going on in the comments, but somebody from PowerDrift has. So let's see what the questions are. 22 IPOP 22 says, should we change tire pressure in the rains for better grip? I just said some people like it 2 psi lower. Don't go ridiculously low. Don't go 10 psi lower. It's 2-3 psi. If you like it, go for it. Don't go lower than that. You raise the risk of punctures too much. And if you hit a pothole hard enough, then the tire may not be able to protect the rim. You might end up cutting something significant and having to stop on the side of the road because of it. Shubham Sangle 25, cruising speed during the rains. Dude, I almost do normal speeds that I would do in the dry. In the rains, I just back off the gas a lot earlier for things, and I would usually leave a lot more space for myself to brake. But my actual cruising speed might actually be exactly the same. I'm not going to answer the random non-rain riding questions today. Rahe... So, R Reddy 490 is asking me, how do I earn money? PowerDrift. I am live because they are paying me to talk to you. No, man, I'm a journalist. This is what I do for a living. This is where I get my salary from. Javali 19, suggestion on how to ride in the rain for those who wear spectacles. We've talked about it. Toothpaste, shaving foam on the lenses will prevent the fogging, and there's a whole bunch of products that you can use. Advisable to cover a bike while not in use, should be left exposed. Cover it. I cover it. I use the Oxford Aquatex covers, which I'm actually quite happy about. There are other brands, Mototech, etc. They all make them. So get a cover and put it on top of in the rain. Ideally, if you can move the bike into the shade so there's not tip happening on top of your bike the entire rainy season, that will help. It's not the water itself, it's the fact that the water is contaminated and it's got chemicals in it. Maybe it came off a roof and went down the chhajja and then fell on your bike and picked up some stuff along the way that can corrode things. That's the kind of thing you're trying to prevent. Which riding gloves should we use in the rain? Asks Mintu8080. I use the BMW GS dry gloves because they have Gore Grip, which is a material where they take the Gore-Tex line and they stick it to the glove so it doesn't pull out when you take your hand out, and I find it really, really convenient. But most of the Indian brands also make waterproof gloves. The trick is to buy one size larger for the waterproofs than regular gloves so that it's easier for you to get your hand in and out. That changes many things because otherwise they're super inconvenient because you pull the lining out and then you have to sort of try and stick your lining. It's really nasty. WD-40 in switches more frequently. You can, but WD-40 also leaves residue behind. So my suggestion would be electrical contact cleaner would probably be a better trick. Honestly, I've never done it. Okay, so when my bike goes for the post-rain detail where they thoroughly clean the bike out, that's when they do that one round of contact cleaner, not much more than that. But to me, WD-40 is fine, it works, it's quite okay, but it does leave residue behind. So I would prefer to use electrical contact cleaner, nothing wrong with WD-40 itself. Sid Ron says, where can I get human skin for my bike? Start with yours. And that's the number of questions. Now let me see if there is any quick questions from the... Wow, there is a lot of comments in here. What if I get my bike drowned and the air filter is wet? Happened to me. Well, if your air filter is wet, then the first thing you need to do is get all the water out of the system. So you're going to have to dry the air filter. If you're going to get water into the air filter, I'm going to assume you got it up the exhaust as well. So you're going to also have to figure out how to dry the exhaust out, and only then should you try to start the bike. If you get the water into the combustion chamber, you're in trouble because water doesn't compress. So as the piston comes up and tries to compress the water will basically break your engine. So be careful if you're getting that kind of water in. A wet air filter on its own is not really that much of a problem. How to maintain chain sprocket in the wet? Somebody had also asked about the lubes, and this is from Mohit Nimare. Okay, Mohit, I would clean my chain a lot more often in the rain because the amount of muck that is being thrown onto it is quite a bit more. So I would usually do every other weekend for the bikes in the dry. I would do it every weekend for my bikes. I like to use the Wurz branded chain cleaner, although all of them including the Motul one works. For chain lubes though, I prefer not to use the Motul because I don't think it lasts very well. I would prefer to use, on the cheap side, the Wurz is a good chain lube, but what I actually like to use is a brand called Puto Line, which is sold in India by Bay City Speed Shop. They have 2 or 3 brands. There's Dry Tech, there is Tech Chain. Tech Chain has a white coating, actually works quite well in the rain. Dry Tech doesn't have a colored coating, but also actually works really well. But basically you just need to spray it over. If I'm going for a longer ride, I will also add, there is a lube called JC Moto's Dino Lube. I don't know the JC Moto is on Instagram, but Joshua Crasto is. That's his handle. Go to Joshua Crasto and ask him to sell you some. It appears like a thick paste. I believe it's heavy duty grease that goes on the chains that run conveyor belts and heavy duty equipment like that. But you can use that, and I use that as a secondary coating on long rides so that the protection lasts quite a bit longer. I'm getting questions on bikes that I don't really want to take today about... how do I increase my riding skills on my Interceptor? Raj, stay raw. I would say anybody who needs to improve their skills needs to come to a racetrack. Come to the TWO school, the one that Power Drift and Indy Motard run. And the reason for that is because we are not a racing school. We don't want you to line up on the grid. That's not the intent of the school. The intent of the school is to show you the basics of motorcycle riding so that you can consciously think about how to ride better. And from that perspective, the school works really well. We've had people show up on Impulses, on Classic 350s, on Tigers, V-Rods, Street 750s, and of course the usual KTMs and Yamaha R15s and all of that. So it's a great school to come and figure out how to ride your motorcycle better. I would say that would be a great investment. I want to tell you that at the end of May we have dates and that's going to happen, but there's still too many variables in play with the lockdown, so we'll figure this part out. But to me, get to a school. I believe we run the best school in the country, but get to a school that will immediately give you a boost in how you can use your motorcycle and the skills that you've got. The guy next to Universe says, Wurth doesn't have any factory outlets. Where do you get yours? Amazon, man. What type of rain gear? Asked Bhalu. I buy the cheapest outer layers from Decathlon, their Quechua line or whatever, and most of my other gear has come with the liner inside or not. So for example, the black jacket that I'm wearing in the Bucket List series, that has no rain gear at all, so I just use the Quechua thing on top. The white jacket that I wore, for example, in the Serbia video, the Balkans video, that Dainese has a Gore-Tex liner, which I was actually wearing for most of that shoot because it was quite cold. My riding makes the gear harder. How do I ride? Varun, I think you have a little bit of a challenge changing gears. It looks like, and honestly, there's no way for me to diagnose it on the line here. Okay, we have one more question. Which light is good for visibility in the rain? LED or halogen? Okay, don't worry about LED or halogen. Look at the Kelvin count. Okay, there's a number there. Usually it says 6,000 K. What you want is 5,000 or 5,500 K is the range that you want your light to be. It's yellow. So if you see the light that's falling on this side of my face is a little bit yellow, this is the kind of light that will give you more visibility. Then there is a blue light here which will give you less visibility. That's the Kelvin count talking, okay? So you want lights that are closer to 5,000 Kelvin than 6,000. 6,000 is bluish in the wet, on our dark roads, not very effective. Lazy Bull 17, won't leather gloves be ruined if you use in the rain? Not really, no. They get wet, they leak a lot of dye, your hands will turn blue and they'll stay blue for a couple of days because it's leather dye and this is effectively the same material. But after that, you need to recondition them. So to dry them, don't put them out in the sun. They need to be here in the shade inside the house. Doesn't really need a fan, it just needs a couple of days to dry out. It'll become rock hard. And then you take basic leather polish. I use furniture polish. The first one I bought was from a 99 rupee store. So it was literally a 99 rupee bottle of leather polish and it worked just fine. Basically rub it in and you'll suddenly realize that the leather becomes softer. When you do this, the leather will be slipperier than usual. So in your first ride, when you touch the levers and all, you'll realize it feels a little slippery, especially on metal to leather contact, but it works itself out. Do you wax your bike seasonally or yearly? After the rains, definitely it will get a thorough clean out and that implies a wax. When I get it serviced, it is clean, but I don't think it's waxed. Yeah, so I would probably get waxed twice a year at max. I'm not a regular waxing type. All right, is there more questions? Is diesel good for cleaning chains? Yes, diesel is good for cleaning chains. Usually you don't want solvents like kerosene and all that because they could eat up the seal, but diesel is actually quite safe. All right. So we've been online for almost an hour now. I'm going to take your leave. This was a chat about riding in the rain, and I leave you with the 2 or 3 things that I've learned over the years. First, learn to love riding in the rain because it is the most dramatic improvement in your riding skills that you'll get throughout the year for free. 2, get over the fear of rain. Your skin is waterproof. We are not a cold country. You're not going to freeze. It's a great time to be out there. So go enjoy it. And if in your head you think I'm going to go out and have a great time, I promise you, chances are you will. But if you're saying, my crotch will get wet, and then if you're going to think like that, then you're not going to enjoy the rain and you're missing out because it's beautiful. The amount of focus that riding in the rain, the amount of anticipation, the amount of skill that is required to say that car is about to do that and therefore I have to do this now, which could be rolling off the throttle, changing direction, changing a lane, hitting the brakes. All that is just going to be amazing. And that's why riding in the rain is so special. I promise you, every single time I've gone out in the rain, I've come back with a huge fat smile on my face and the belief that I did something better than the last time I rode a motorcycle this time. So we are in the lockdown. According to what we've heard yesterday, the lockdown will get extended beyond the 18th and we'll figure out what the shape of that is. But eventually we will get back on motorcycles. Chances are it will be when the rains have started. Remember, you don't want to ride on the first few days of the rains because that's when the rain is still washing all the muck off the road. That's when the grip comes back. It's after the 4th or the 5th day. That's when you want to start riding. Go out there and enjoy it. Enjoy the fact that you got soaked. It's okay. You'll dry out later and your clothes will get washed. Even if your leather got wet and your hands turned blue. It looks like you played Holi at an inopportune time, but that also fades out. Look, I've gotten these black multiple times and they look perfectly normal to me. So there's nothing to really worry about. Is the risk level higher? Yes, it is. Should that stop you? You're a motorcyclist. You're already part of the risk process. It's a matter of how much are you willing to take. I'm telling you, the first 5 days, I'm not willing to take the risk at all. The rest of the season, I can't wait to get back on a motorcycle. Try it. It is absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for watching. This is Power Drift. We've just finished the bucket list series. I hope you've all gone and see it. It's a full labor of love for us. We really, really enjoyed. We shot and worked our hearts out for those films. Thank you so much for the feedback. Thank you so much for joining me live. If there's more questions, you can ping us here on Power Drift or on my account, which is at @shu_mar. I try and answer every question I can. Power Drift, of course, tries to do as much as it can, but with as many followers as we've got, you guys, it's a little difficult to keep up with all of it. So please do have a little bit of patience with us. But message that I want to leave with you today is, don't think of the rain as a problem. Think of it as a beautiful, beautiful little challenge that you can overcome and then do so much more on your motorcycle because you did. Riding in the rain, dude, is the best kind of riding that I've ever done. I highly, highly recommend it. Thank you so much for watching.